In the name of the Father, of the Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Mary, Queen of Carmel, pray for us. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. There are some people who are very kind to me because you've maintained the same seats. There are others that have moved around, which means you're trying to confuse me. Any thoughts or questions from what we did last night?
Just an answer to the second question, that's all. I'll come back later.
Oh, those questions will be answered. Don't worry. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, just to let you know, just to remind you of where we got to. We looked at, well, the situation in the church at the moment, because we need to start with the playing field that we're in and acknowledge what it is and where we are. And there's nothing to say. That's the way it is. To say anything else is what you call wishful thinking. And that's the reality. In many ways, we're a bit like the poor Germans after the Second World War. Auschwitz is there. There's nothing to say. It is. Okay. And the good thing for us is the German nation has gone on wonderfully well in its own kind of German way since the Second World War. And that's the thing. You don't look at what happened. What happened is where you are, and you walk, you move, because there's nothing that you can do about what happened. What happened makes demands, okay, and those demands must be met. But what happened is not simply the demands of what happened which determine us now, okay? Because if our determination is simply from the demands, then I think we should just give up and go away, because that's not the right attitude. So we need to now move on and see what else there is, because in the present environment, the only thing which weighs on people's shoulders are a sense of the demands of the situation. And that's why people feel trapped, people are confused, they don't know what to do, because that, for them, that's the story. We looked at the fundamental question, which I think is, when I said to you I'm different to the other bishops, one of me is quite enough, because otherwise if all the bishops were like me, we would be in an awful situation. The extraordinary thing about the church is the many parts. And the many parts of the church are valuable. I come from that part of the church which will ask the question always, regardless of whether it's good or bad. The fundamental St. John of the Cross question is, where is God? Because as I said, until I know where God is, it is stupid of me to try to work out what to do. Because I'm treating it as a puzzle, as a problem. Humanly, it might be a problem, but for those who believe, it is not a problem. In fact, it always comes down to the same thing. Where is God in this situation? Because if I can find God, I know that I've got nothing to worry about. Because this is God's world, this is God's church. And as I said to you last night, you must not forget that everything we're ashamed about that has happened could not have happened if God didn't allow it. We don't blame God for it. But because God allowed it, it means extraordinary things can come from it. It doesn't in any way take away the heinous nature of it. It doesn't take away the failings of the church. Nor does it take away what is rightfully demanded of us. Well, I say us. It's not simply rightfully demanded of a bishop, because I have no place except that there is a church, and there is no church without you. Okay? So you can't say, Bishop, that's your problem. No, it's our problem. If there's anything the Vatican II taught us, and that's why the whole sense of the laity's gone astray. It's almost as if the laity has to be something on its own. That was the problem. The clergy were on their own. No, it's us. Okay? And once we can find God, then it becomes God's work. We walk with God. So the question that I left you last night is, where is God? And the second question I left you with was, why on earth are you here this weekend? Why do you still go to Mass on Sunday? I don't belong in this church, so what are you doing here? It's a powerful thing, because the experience that you have is part of the way out, the way forward. Because the experience that you have is from God. I have no doubt about that. St. Teresa would say that absolutely. Because you are being loved by God now. So the experiences that you're having now are not apart from God. You just have to find God in that experience. So we can now move the question, where is God, a little further. And that's where I want to go next and take it to the gospel. Because our way is not from doctrine, liturgy, or any of these things. Our way is from Jesus Christ. And the fundamental point then there is we must always go to the gospel, because it is where the word of God is found. It is where I find Jesus Christ. I don't find Jesus Christ in the Nicene Creed. I'm probably the only person, well, I can see one person sitting down the back in the corner who would know what consubstantial with the Father means, which is why in my diocese we use the Apostles' Creed. I don't see the point of babbling on for so long and people don't know what they're saying. And I'm one of these ones. You come to Lismore Cathedral and you can be out of Mass in 37 minutes with a choir and a full homily. Because I say to my young priests, what you don't realise, some of them from overseas, that for the average Australian, from the moment they come into Mass on Sunday, all they want to do is go home. So for God's sake, don't disappoint them. It's just the worst thing you can do. Then they just stay at home. Otherwise, they won't come back. Silly priest. Anyway, so they're the questions we have to ask. But I want to give you another principle now, because as I said to you, we have to work step by step. And it's something which comes from St. Teresa of Avila, which she gives us in the interior castles, almost certainly in the second mansions. I'm not as up to, I don't have Carmelite stuff at my fingertips the way that I used to, because I don't work with it as much as I used to. So now I'm working with things in a diocese. But she makes it very clear that knowledge of Jesus Christ, and therefore for us at the moment knowledge of God, always moves in proportion with knowledge of self, which is self-knowledge. And self-knowledge or knowledge of self moves in proportion with knowledge of God. So I can't know who God is except by knowing myself. And I can't know myself apart from knowing God. So we have to expand the question I gave you last night. If you gave all the questions at once, you would have gone away and been confused. Probably were confused, but it doesn't matter. It's not my fault. That's God's fault. Where is God? Must go with the question, where are you? Where is God? Where am I? The two questions must always go together, because to do that fails to recognize the incarnate God. To do that fails to recognize that God is amongst us, and not only amongst us but with me. Not to do that is to fail to recognize that God is within me. So where is God also means where am I? And where am I means where is God? Okay? That now becomes the beginnings of our moving this morning. because you can begin to describe where you are. That's a wonderful thing. You mightn't know where you are, because many of you are wondering why you still go to Mass on Sunday. You don't know where you are, but you can describe where you are. That's an extraordinary thing. You will find that with me and with many Carmelites, whatever I've got is what God has given me. And you work with what you've got. You find in what you've got the presence of God. You don't climb a mountain to find God. You don't go to Medjugorje to find God. You find God here, where you are now. So where are you? Now that question, in fact, becomes a bit easier when I change it this way. The question, where is God, is a difficult question for every religious tradition that claims a belief in God. Where is God? They say, well, God's in our liturgical things. That's a bit of a cop-out. God is in our books. But Christianity says, where is God? God is in this person, Jesus Christ. Where is God goes hand in hand for us. It's a different question for a Christian. For the others, where is God? In fact, it's a theological question, it's a religious question, it's all these things. But for us as Christians, where is God is first and foremost a Christ question. Where is Jesus Christ? And you will say to me, does that make the question any easier? Is it easier to say, where is Jesus Christ and where is God? And my answer to you is, it makes it as easy as falling off your chair, if you wanted to fall off your chair. Because that's the whole point of the gospel. The gospel gives us Jesus Christ, not as an historic figure, not as a theological figure, but it gives us Jesus Christ as a person who experiences, who talks, who does, who in fact, when you look at it, is everything that I am. Or, yes, it's what I strive to be, but also I find in Jesus Christ who I am at the moment. That's the essential move that must be taken by a Christian with the gospel. It's not the gospel's the word of God and therefore we are people of the gospel. Yeah, it's all those things. But that's meaningless humanly, except that Jesus in the gospel is me today. And we now have the link to find where is God for us now. Because it becomes now the question, where is Jesus for us now? And therefore it becomes the simple question, as it was for St. Teresa of Avila. Where is Jesus Christ in the gospel the way I am now? That's why I said the question, where is God, where is Jesus? They're the same question now, must be attached to the question, where am I? Who is Jesus goes with who am I? They're very important things. In fact, everything that I'm giving you in this, if you know anything about Carmelite spirituality, you will say, yeah, that's what John of the Cross does. Yeah, that's what St. Teresa of Avila does. Yeah, that's what St. Therese does. Because it's at the core of this particular tradition in the Church. So, where is Jesus Christ? Where am I in Jesus Christ now? And looking at my experience of myself, looking at where I am, I can't speak for you, but I would say when I open the Gospels, the most natural place to recognize where I am, where the Church is, And perhaps where you are is Jesus walking to Calvary. I saw someone nod. Because that's what we're meant to do with the Gospels, which is why we're meant to know the Gospel so well that we can, regardless of what's happening in me, I can identify myself with Christ. That's what knowledge of the Gospel's for. St. Jerome said ignorance of the Gospel is ignorance of Christ. And people think that ignorance, what he meant by that is you don't understand. Well, I would say ignorance of the Gospel this way is ignorance of Christ. Because I know the Gospel, because the Gospel becomes me and my story. That's that whole sense of I will abide in you, that the whole aspect of the last discourses of Christ in St. John's Gospel, chapters 14 to 17. I will abide in you. If my word is in you, you will be pruned by my word. What does that mean? It means that the gospel is in me, the gospel is in you. When the gospel is external to you, all you can do is preach it. When the gospel is internal to you, you can live it. And the gospel is meant to be internal for all of us. So let's have a look and see, where is Jesus? Where are we? He went to the cross carrying the sins of others, an innocent victim. He went to the cross carrying the sins of others. He did not defend himself, nor did he understand why he was going to the cross. And we presume, oh, you must, no. I don't think that the humanity of Christ, all he knew was, this is my Father's will, I love him and I don't want to go. But he walked there in silence and died. I think that's the church today. But certainly, as I said to bishops before I became a bishop, I said this to bishops about 10 years ago, look at Calvary, because it's your job to carry the sins of others to Calvary with no defence and to publicly die. But I'm convinced that's not alone my job as the bishop now. It's ours. Because you're carrying the same cross. 15 years ago, it was probably only the bishop carrying that cross because he was the one that knew, that didn't know how to act. Some acted wonderfully. Others didn't know what to do. Some acted in a way that they shouldn't have acted, perhaps. I don't know, because I don't know their stories. But it's become clear to me that this is where Christ is. Now, this is where he is in our story at the moment. He carried his cross. Now, I know that I'm being asked to carry that with him. And nothing else, except at this stage, to carry it. There's nothing else asked. Because to do anything other than carry is to move away from Christ. And I think to do anything else other than carry it, in terms of what it is, all these other things have to be done. The administrative things that I spoke to you about yesterday have to be done. To ensure that it never happens again, to ensure adequate care and compensation for the victims, to ensure love for the perpetrators. All of this is what he did. It's kind of, you look at the story. You don't have to ask what to do. You know what it is. As the first step, I think that's where we are at the moment. That's the place of our church right now. And if that is the case, then we are at the centre of salvation. We are right where it's about. I ponder that, because on Good Friday this year, it might be the first Good Friday that you've had with Jesus, in the full sense of the word, not as a spectator. That's why all these stations of the cross and things like that, for me, I'm not interested anymore, because I'm a spectator in that. I'm watching someone, I'm feeling sorry for you, I'm walking with you. But the call of the Christian is to be Christ. So at this point at least, I think we've got to the position of saying, I think I can see where God is. I can see where Christ is. And as members of the church, he's in all of us in this. So where you are is authentic. Where you are is correct. Did he understand why he was dying on the cross? Did he understand why he walked there carrying the cross? And so I think one of the first things necessary in the spiritual life is any obstacle to walking with Christ must be dispelled. And it's something which, without kind of trying to break into my own spiritual life before you, at one time of my life as a Carmelite, I am still a cerebral person, but I was very cerebral. And so for me, questions were important. And as clear as a bell, once in prayer was given to me, stop asking questions, because your question comes between you and me. And the extraordinary gift of that moment was the question was taken from me. I didn't have to choose to get rid of it. But in order to walk with him in this, it requires a certain change within ourselves, a change of disposition. Because in the true things of God, the profound things of God, there will not necessarily be a human reason. Because if there is, you're doing it for yourself. That also is very Carmelite. That's John of the Cross. If I'm doing this because it is reasonable for me and I've worked this out, who am I doing it for? My God, why have you forsaken me? No answer. I don't want to go to Calvary. Then says Peter, don't. Get behind me, Satan, because your ways are the ways of the world and not the ways of God. Did his Father give him an answer on the mountain? No. He sent two people to tell Jesus what was going to happen to him, what was going to take place in Jerusalem. At least it was consoling in one sense, because the discussion was coming from the law and the prophets. But no one could explain, just as no one now can explain, why on earth do you want me to go and die on Calvary? Why do you want this? It remains a question that non-believers look at and say, no, this is rubbish. If God is love, how can God in love want this of his Son? And for Jesus, you love me, how can you want this of me? And the only way he could have gone to the cross was that he let go of that question. Otherwise, he would have gone to the cross fighting and without love. Do you see what I'm saying? Kind of these things are implicit in Jesus Christ, which is why we cannot be spectators. If you were going there, you would be asking the question. That would change the way you went to Calvary. If you were asking those questions, you could not have done what Jesus did, walking on the way to Calvary. If you had those questions, you could not have died freely, because you would have died reluctantly if you had those questions. So as we begin to say, where is God in our present predicament? I think he's exactly where we are. And in order to begin to find what to do, the peculiar thing is I have to stop asking questions. Because otherwise I'm not with him. Because the answer, I won't say the answer, no, the way comes from an experience of God. And you say, wow, why? No one's ever said that. They should. Because that's what religion's about. It's about God. And Christianity is about experience of God through my own humanity, because Jesus Christ is a human being. I'll pause to see, because I've got all these odd-looking faces looking at me with strange expressions, and I don't understand your expressions. Any thoughts or questions? I've been talking for half an hour, so it's probably a good time to take any thoughts or questions. Do you want me to say it all again?
I'm interested, like yesterday you were saying that at the New South Wales Bishops' Conference, that because you are discarded Carmelite, your opinion is different from all the others.
Yes, they must all have different opinions, though, because they're from different places.
Of course, and what is that training that you mentioned that makes you different from the other ways of thinking?
It's a few hours of prayer every day for 30-something years.
All the other bishops will be praying a few hours, I would say.
No, it's not part of their way of life. We've got Brother Adab at the back there, who, if he does what he's supposed to be doing, is praying at least about 3.5 hours every day.
Throughout the day at different hours, different parts.
Yes, but for two blocks of 1 hour each of prayer. That's our tradition. Okay, and a Jesuit would have a different way. A Dominican would have another way. And that's the beauty of the church, is its diversity.
So your opinion will be different from them as in...
No, it's not so much an opinion. The difference is the way I am responding to what's happening. It's very different, because each man will respond differently, just as, you know, and that's the gift of the church in its diverse possibilities, that without one, we've got something missing, and all of it has to be gathered together. Any other thought? Yes?
Bishop, you seem to be quietly implying, as you did in the last retreat, that the way that God has given you and the way in which you are living is in a certain way a superior way.
I don't think so, no. It's my way.
I recall you saying at the last retreat that talking to your priests in the diocese of Lismore, you could see that they were good men, and that under certain circumstances they could have been Carmelites like me.
That's because I wish everyone could be a Carmelite. Because for me, in terms of my personality and disposition, Carmelite just fits like a glove. It won't fit for it won't fit for most people. But the whole purpose of Carmelite life is to know and love God. and in doing that, to come to holiness, and in doing that, to bring others to holiness.
It's very different to others. It's got nothing to do with preaching the gospel or caring for the sick or those kind of things, because in fact nobody can do everything.
And for me, but it's not to say it's better. No, because there's never been a Carmelite Pope.
Your reference to 2 hours and then another 2 hours prayer per day, as compared with some other people, seem to imply that gives you an edge.
No, because the big difference is Carmelites are lazy. They're used to sitting around doing nothing. If you want to get work done, a Carmelite's not the first person that you'd ask. There are others for whom their following of the gospel is out there backbreaking work. Which is better? Neither.
I'm listening to what you're saying about not questioning. And I suppose I'm sitting here thinking that there are times when we need to question what's going on around us, because that's actually how some of this stuff happened, because people didn't question.
There are two kinds of questions.
Yeah, so that's why I'm looking.
There are the questions which we have to ask. My big question every day is, what will I have for breakfast? There are questions that have to be asked. Things are going wrong. I'm a bishop. I have to question. But those questions don't come between me and God. They don't interrupt what's there. They're in questions, and some of them I have to persevere with because it's my job. But those questions don't eat me up on the inside. Remember last night I said to you, attend to the way what's within you impacts on you. This is very Ignatian. Some will lead you to what is good, some will take you away from the good. And the good also includes your personal integrity and balance. And if what's inside you takes you away from that, at most let it serve its purpose, but do not hold on to it. Because you have a choice, and that choice is about who you will be in the future and about your well-being in the presence of God. Now, very often people are consumed by angry because the question brings about anger and all these kind of things. Because very often, philosophically, with the question you ask, is there an answer to this question? Should this question be asked? It's another thing. People say, every question should be asked. No, not necessarily. Because a question mark does not denote an equivalent kind of proposition. They're all different. Some questions are about information, some are about human well-being. They're all different. And which questions do you allow to become who you are? And for old Father Hilary, it was one question: where are you, God? Where are you, Jesus? And that was who he became. Just a beautiful man looking for God. So the questions are very important, because they will take on a life of their own, and questions can destroy a person. And for goodness sake, don't let that happen to any of you. But beware of it. Know that that can happen. It's what should be taught in our schools. From an early age, kids need to be made aware of what they can allow into themselves to destroy them. One of the obvious things today is this terrible plague of pornography. It is destructive of the person, but there are many other things, because they take away our freedom. Yes. Look, there's someone that is in email contact with me, and I've met him at the cathedral. He's not a Catholic, and he was abused in an institution, but not within the Catholic Church, which means that I'm the kind of person he feels that he can contact. If you're abused within the Catholic Church is the person that somehow what happened to you defines you, and therefore you can't go there. But this person came to me, and I've been reading things and listening to things, and is now finding Jesus Christ. Because as I said yesterday, the real issue in this is not so much justice. Justice is the easy part. The difficult part is healing. The difficult part is love. Love is always the difficult part. It's the easiest thing to talk about. But it's the hardest thing to do, because when we look at it either this afternoon or tomorrow, we actually don't have the love within us with which to love. That's the problem. To love adequately. The place where we are now is to be able to identify ourselves with Christ. That identification, which is, I think, what Calvary means for us this Easter, is that we have a real way to identify with Christ. Because without Christ, we don't understand our experience. That's a very important move, kind of. Otherwise, we're just trying to imagine. But when, without Christ, I don't understand myself, then I've got a way then to be with Christ. Because at this point, you'll say, I still don't understand myself. But all I'm saying to you is, Christ going to the cross is like you. That sense, as we look at it. And at this point, I simply want to go through some moments of him going to the cross. The first, I suppose, is being stripped and dressed as someone who is important. Basically, to say to him, you're nobody. And that is what's happened to those who have been abused, those who are perpetrators, and to every member of the church. Everything that we thought has been stripped. And we are being made in society, regardless of whether you're abused, an outsider, a perpetrator. Everyone's been stripped and ridiculed and made to look as he was. Next, he is taken out and he is abandoned by those he loves until he gets to Calvary and finds Mary, John and Mary of Magdala and Mary the wife of Clopas there at the foot of the cross. But effectively abandoned, no friends, nobody. And it's part of the experience of every one of these. The abused feels abandoned, friendless. The perpetrator feels ostracized and cast out. And those of us who are walking along feel that, well, who would dare say, I work for the Catholic Church today? Because of the response that people will get. Even my own staff say to me, look, I go to things and people say, why are you still working for them? That sense of that. Then he was taken and died. Do you understand Jesus Christ? From within yourself. Because if you can make a connection with him, you've found God. Okay, so kind of what I'm giving you at the moment is not what you expected. You're expecting me to say there is God in what's happening over there. It's still externalized. But the question, where is God and where are you, is an internal question. And the good news is that Calvary is on the edge of Holy Saturday and the resurrection. In fact, it's necessary for these two places. In fact, in my own mind, for the people in the gospel, Holy Saturday is the most significant day, not Good Friday. So, can you begin to see where you are and where Jesus is? Because if you can, you have to be Jesus. You have to make that simple step that we are one. Because until we as members of the church, until you can say we, and the we is Jesus and myself, we will never know where we're going. We'll never know what to do, what the step is, because it will be my choice. It'll be my fabrication. I suppose it was always something which troubled me, even when I was just a discalced Carmelite, but it troubles me even more now that I'm a bishop. And that is fear that I'm doing my will, not God's will. And the question is, but how can I try to avoid that? Huh? But I have an image of myself one day walking out there, and there's St. Teresa. She'll be very kind. She's a kind lady. But I wonder what she'll ask me. I wonder what she'll say to me. And it comes down to, and this is from John of the Cross, strive not to do your own will. That's hard. I do. I chose what I wanted to have for breakfast, but that doesn't matter. But it's that sense in which we need to be constantly scrutinizing ourselves. Is this God or is this me, especially as a bishop? Because the me can do lots of things. But the me with Christ can do God's will. Not only for himself, but for the church. You know, that sense. And that's what was happening as he was going to Calvary. But it's something which is crucial for all of us. There's no point identifying with Christ without seeking what he wanted, which is to do the will of his Father. And that's not a notional thing. It's a sense now of having once made that identification on Calvary, of finding the way in which we live to be Christ. Okay? And that's probably, should I stop here or should I go on? I'll leave you with a question, because I've got a sense of the way you're looking at me. I look at people and you're looking at me as if to say, I need to go and think about all of this. So if I give you too much more, it'll push things out the other side of the ear. And that's not a very good thing. The question that you should ask the gospel and ask him is, why did you go on and why didn't you come down from the cross? Come down is what one of the Gospels has. Come down. Or that we're waiting to see if Elijah will come and save him. And these are not stupid things that are spoken, because he knows that he can come down. He knows he can get out of this. Leave the church. It's the same as come down from the cross. I'm just trying to situate you in Calvary. Come down from the cross is the same as saying to the Bishop of Lismore, just run away. Come down from the cross, leave the church. Or if you're not brave enough to leave the church, stop going to Mass. Just get out of there. Why didn't he come down from the cross? And we do know that it wasn't because he was experiencing the Father there. My God, why have you forsaken me? There was no resolution of a question. I know he had dropped the question. It was gone. There was no resolution of it. Where are you? But he didn't come down. He died. And in a very real way, each of us has to die, not physically. But that death is important for me, and I can't say for you. It's important for me and it's important for the church. And I'm not talking about the eradication of clericism, the change of systems, the change of all these things. Because we could do all of these things and nothing will change. Nothing will be achieved, because the whole point of this is holiness and the point of this is God. So people talk about all these things. The church should do this, that and the other. And think, yeah, we can do all of these things, but is anyone going to be better? Will we get one saint out of that? Come down. It's the beginning of the answer to the question why you're here. Because in spite of how you feel, we have to die with Christ. That's what it means in Paul's understanding, to make up what is lacking in the sufferings of Christ. What it means in Paul's language, to become Christ. That's 55 minutes. Any ideas or thoughts? Because I think that's the next thing I want you to do, is to ponder that. And then we're in a position this evening at 7:30 to move into something which will start to change. This evening's input will be quite different to this, but at least this, I think, helps you identify with where we are. But once the identification is made, there is a way forward. And it's very clear from Jesus Christ, because you have to continue moving with him. Any thoughts or questions? Did any of that make any sense? So I've got no idea. It makes sense to me, but that doesn't mean it makes sense to anyone, because I've got Carmelites who will give homilies that makes eminent sense to them, but no one has any idea what they're talking about. Some of you know who I'm talking about, and they can talk on forever. And I think, oh, God, I don't know what he's talking about. So just because it makes sense to me, it doesn't really prove anything. Thoughts, questions, none? Okay, we've got morning tea in that room over there. Thank you. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.